camaraderie. And so certainly every individual has to think about, what are their goals and what's realistic for them. Because if you choose something that you don't inherently have an interest in, then you won't keep doing it. And it doesn't provide a lot of use, or it's not that helpful to exercise once a year, right? If you really want to get the benefit from it, you need to do it regularly. And so it's really important to think about what's going to be sustainable.
Yeah, no, very, very insightful. So, what kind of exercise or recreational activities can they get involved in? So I know you've been very active, especially with wheelchair racing. Um, you know, having competed in the Paralympics and then Boston Marathon, New York Marathon, all sorts of races.
hmm Well, there's such a broad spectrum of options for people these days, and it really does matter where you live. For example, if you live in an urban environment, then there are usually a lot more opportunities for things like having access to inclusive fitness facilities or adaptive sports programs. For example, whereas if you live in a more rural area, it can be tough. It can be tougher to have direct access to those programs. But there's also these days a lot of online resources. There's great websites. Like, for example, there's a website called the National Center for Health, Physical Activity, and Disability, and they have great online content so that even if you live on the top of a mountain 2 hours from the nearest civilization, you can still pull things up on the internet and still get exercise or guidance on exercise. So there's really a spectrum these days. And I always encourage people to really just think about a few things. A, what are your goals? Are your goals to exercise or be active in more of an individual environment? Or do you want to be involved in a more social environment where, for example, you may be part of like a team sport or going to a fitness facility where there are other people around and you can have that socialization and that camaraderie. And so certainly every individual has to think about, what are their goals and what's realistic for them. Because if you choose something that you don't inherently have an interest in, then you won't keep doing it. And it doesn't provide a lot of use, or it's not that helpful to exercise once a year, right? If you really want to get the benefit from it, you need to do it regularly. And so it's really important to think about what's going to be sustainable.
To our next set of questions, which is on raising kids in a
Oh,
chair.
yeah.
Yeah, so how is raising a child with both you and your husband, I know, having a disability? What are the challenges and the fun parts?
Sure. Well, I think, honestly, yes, we both have disabilities, but that never phased us too much from having the goal of being parents, because we're certainly used to just, honestly, we figure it out as we go, just like everyone with a disability does. And and we have different disabilities. I'm a wheelchair user and a paraplegic from spinal cord injury, and my husband has cerebral palsy, and he has some weakness on his left side, and he walks. So at least we have somewhat different disabilities that and different levels of function. But overall, there are certainly some challenging moments, but I think we work together and we make it happen. Um, I guess some key examples would be, for example, um, we both have things that are more difficult for us and easier for us. So, for example, he has limited use of one of his hands. So, things like changing her diaper or changing her clothes into a new outfit, all of that, he can do it, but it takes a while and it's sort of high maintenance and kind of a pain. Whereas I can do that very easily. So, for those things, I'm usually the one who takes charge and takes care of those things. And then things like, especially as she's getting her bigger and heavier, things like picking her up, that's easier for him than for me, because I don't have great balance, and so it's sometimes hard to like reach down and pick her up and put her on my lap when she's getting heavier. And so I think just day to day, honestly, we just tag team and whoever's there, as long as we're both there, can more easily do this or that. We just sort of trade off and make it happen. And then we plan a lot. So, for example, if I'm going to be watching her all day by myself, or he's going to be watching her all day by himself, then we just plan and strategize how to make the day a little bit easier. And we certainly implemented some, I guess you could say, we called them life hacks early on when she was little. And actually, I got some great tips from other friends who are wheelchair users and moms. And we actually have a Facebook group, if anyone's ever interested, called Wheelie Moms, where you can ask questions and get feedback. Yeah, we had some great discussions on that. And I honestly got some invaluable tips for especially the infant phase when she was really little. So, for example, someone recommended that when we think about how to set up a crib, that we get just a basics design kind of crib, like from IKEA, and actually have a handyman cut the side in half and then put hinges on the outside so that the doors actually sort of swing open, rather than having to reach up and over to try to get the baby in and out of the crib, which would, because I'm short and also don't have very good balance, that would be pretty much impossible. So by adjusting and modifying the crib so that I can kind of open the door of the crib, that's made it so much easier to get her in and out and just, help her out and take care of her over the first few years. And there was also great tips regarding things like what type of strollers are easiest to use if you're a wheelchair user, which types have, hand brakes versus brakes that you operate with your foot, which are the lightest weight to get in and out of a car. And honestly, all of that stuff I just learned from friends and mentors who had been through the ropes and could give me advice. So it's really important that we share our ideas and resources, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel. People have done this before, and it's nice to be able to ask people who've done it successfully.